With James Gunn's DCU officially in full swing, it's only a matter of time before we start getting into the meat and potatoes of this universe. Before 2025, we didn't really know much about the DCU in its entirety because of the fact that we just hadn't really gotten much. But since we've obviously gotten Superman 2025, Peacemaker Season 2, and we know a lot more about Supergirl and Lanterns, I think that in this video, I can finally give you guys the storylines that I personally would love to see in this universe. And these are storylines that I also think are very likely to happen in this universe. Now, I just want to clarify that these storylines are things that are selected specifically because of the fact that I like them, and also again because I think that they actually have a very good chance of happening. So if a storyline for a character that you really like isn't in this video, I'm apologizing to you in advance. Diving right into the topic, I think that one of the main themes of the DCU thus far has been government control, or lack of trust surrounding metahumans. And we've seen this obviously play out with the likes of Rick Flag Sr. in Peacemaker Season 2, we've also seen it with Lex Luthor in Superman 2025, and Amanda Waller, who is like the pioneer for not trusting metahumans in the DC universe, is also a very large focal point of the DCU. That being said, considering the fact that this lack of trust is being displayed at such a high degree this early on into the DCU with billionaires and high-ranking people in the government, I think that showcasing this lack of trust from the perspective of someone who is considered a metahuman himself but isn't is something that would be really interesting to see. And that's why the first project on this list is none other than Justice League Tower of Babel. And for those of you who don't know, Tower of Babel is the iconic storyline in which Batman actually creates his contingency plans for the Justice League and they accidentally fall into the hands of Ra's al Ghul. Like I already said, this story would be such a great commentary on the themes that the DCU is already currently pushing. So narratively, it would fit perfectly with what the DCU is already doing, and on top of that, it's one of the most iconic Batman and Justice League stories of all time. So not only would doing this as a Justice League movie guarantee $1 billion in my opinion, we the audience will finally get the opportunity to see Batman and his intellect fully realized in live action, similar to how it is in the source material. And I say this after getting years and years of grounded Batman adaptations that don't really take him to the full heights of what he is in the source. But nonetheless, again, there's so many reasons as to why this would be such a beautiful storyline to see play out in the DCU. Not only would you get some parallels between Batman, Rick Flag Sr. and Amanda Waller because of how they're approaching things, and obviously Batman's is more well-intentioned, they just ended up falling in the wrong hands, but forcing the Justice League to actually sit down and look themselves in the mirror and think to themselves on whether or not they need to be checked power-wise is something I think would be really interesting to see from the perspective of someone like Superman or Wonder Woman. And this is also something that was explored in the DCAU and Justice League Unlimited. So again, all around, this would just be a peak storyline to do. The next storyline that I really would like to see in the DCU is sort of a tie, but not really a tie. It's more so these two storylines go in tandem, and that is Emerald Twilight and Green Lantern Rebirth. Obviously, if you've been watching me for a while, you know that I'm not the biggest fan of the DCU deciding to make Hal Jordan an older veteran in this universe. And that's specifically because of the fact that Hal Jordan is the most important element of the Green Lantern mythos. Without him, you can't really tell 95% of the stories that make them as good as they are. With that being said, obviously, I'm still going to give the DCU the benefit of the doubt and see what they do with the Lanterns. But with Hal Jordan being an older veteran, I think that it's the perfect opportunity for them to take advantage of this and do Emerald Twilight. And this may actually be in the cards because of the fact that Parallax Hal Jordan has already been teased for Lanterns. Now, for those of you who don't know, in Emerald Twilight, Hal Jordan returns to Coast City, his home, and realizes that it has been destroyed by the villain Cyborg Superman and Mongol. Because of the fact that effectively everyone that Hal Jordan loves was destroyed in this attack, he starts to lose his mind, so much so that he uses his ring to create a living construct of the city and try to bring back everyone that died. This, however, violates the rules of the Green Lanterns because the Guardians show up to Hal Jordan and tell him to report to Oa immediately because he's abusing his power. However, because of the fact that Hal Jordan is so stricken with grief, he returns to Oa on a rampage, fights his way through all of the prominent Green Lantern members, eventually fighting his way to Sinestro, who he then ends up killing, or at least he thought he ended up killing him at this point in time, and then he goes all the way to the Central Battery and steals all the energy, dubbing himself Parallax. This was such a polarizing story at the time because Hal Jordan was once a beloved hero and now he had just suddenly turned into a villain. And he was actually the main villain of the 0 Hour event that took place in the 90s. That being said, some years would go by and Hal Jordan, still as Parallax, would end up dying due to sacrificing himself to save the planet. And this, ladies and gentlemen, would kick off his path to redemption because he would then be the next host of the Spectre. After a couple of years of him being the Spectre, this brings us to Green Lantern Rebirth, in which Hal Jordan actually is resurrected back to life and inhabits his old body. However, this body is restored back to his physical prime because of the fact that when he was Parallax, he aged significantly because of the stress and fear that came with being Parallax. It's also revealed in Green Lantern Rebirth that Parallax is actually the emotional entity of fear, and that the only reason that Hal Jordan turned evil in the first place is because he had been slowly corrupted by Parallax over time, dating all the way back to Crisis on Infinite Earths. So the destruction of Coast City was just the amount of pain and suffering that Parallax needed to fully take over Hal. And ladies and gentlemen, it is this story that kicks off the iconic run that is Geoff Johns' 2005 Green Lantern run. And for those of you who don't know, that entire run is the run that saved the Green Lantern mythos and reinvigorated it in the DC universe, establishing all of the other Lantern Corps. So while I don't think we'll get a one-to-one adaptation of Emerald Twilight and Lanterns, I do think that with Parallax Hal potentially being in the play and Hal Jordan being old, that it is a route that they could explore in a loose adaptation. And then from there, if it does end with Parallax Hal Jordan dying or sacrificing himself, you can not only introduce Kyle Rayner at the end of Lantern Season 1, but you could also set up the stage for Green Lantern Rebirth. And that way fans can get old Hal Jordan back in his prime in the DCU, and they could recast him with a new actor. I think that this would be really cool to see play out in the DC universe, and it would also be something unique that's never really happened in live action in any fictional universe, I don't believe. So yeah, it would just be really cool to see that play out, and you also save Hal Jordan fans and Hal Jordan in the DCU. And this also helps to set the stage for some other storylines that I really want to see in the DCU that I'm going to be touching on in this video. The next storyline that I would love to see that I'm pretty sure we're already getting is Superman Brainiac by Geoff Johns. Now, when I say we're already getting this, I don't mean that it's going to be an exact one-to-one copy of this story, but I do think that we're getting a project that will be heavily inspired by this storyline, and that project is none other than Man of Tomorrow. And as we already know from this project, Brainiac is confirmed to be the main villain, and we already know that Supergirl is also going to have a role in the film alongside Superman, obviously. So those are elements that are already present in Man of Tomorrow that are also present in Superman Brainiac, but other elements that I would also love to see is the Bottle City of Kandor being one, and that's specifically because of the fact that with how Superman 2025 ended, I really do think that we need some exploration of Superman's Kryptonian mythology, and the Bottle City of Kandor is the perfect way to do it. If you have Superman get captured by Brainiac at some point in the film and actually explore the Bottle City of Kandor, find out more about Krypton, find out more about his parents, and give us closure as not only fans but also Superman as a character on what his parents were doing on Krypton, I think that would be really cool to see. There's also the Supergirl movie that's coming out this year that'll help to set the stage for that as well. But the second element that I really would love to see, and this might sound kind of messed up, but I really want to see the death of Pa Kent in this movie, and I want it to be one-to-one with how it happens in the Superman Brainiac storyline. What happens is essentially while Brainiac is being defeated by Superman and Superman is figuring out how to save the Bottle City of Kandor, Brainiac fires a missile off of his mothership and sends it directly to the Kent farm in hopes of killing both of Superman's parents. Now, Pa Kent is actually able to save Ma Kent by diving into her and saving her from the missile. But in the process of doing that, he actually triggers a heart attack because of all the physical exertion that he does. When Superman finally realizes that his family is being attacked, he beelines over to the house and he realizes that Pa Kent is actually dead, giving Superman the iconic lesson of the fact that he can't save everyone. Not only could this be one of the most heart-wrenching deaths in comic book movies of all time if done correctly, the scene that follows is equally as rewarding because of the fact that Superman storms wherever Brainiac is being held and he beats the living crap out of him. And seeing David Cornsweet's Superman, the goody two-shoes that we know and love him as, actually lash out as Superman is something that I think everyone would love to see. So for those reasons, Superman Brainiac is just on the list. Another storyline that I need in the DCU and that I think is an absolute no-brainer is Batman Under the Red Hood. Batman Under the Red Hood is obviously one of the most iconic Batman stories of all time. If you do this in live action, it's a guaranteed $1 billion, and I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I feel like if they did this accurately and properly, it could easily make like $2 billion. This could be the first live action Batman movie with like Spider-Man No Way Home levels of hype and build up. Think about it, with the DCU, you'll already have a DCU Batman established with his Bat family. You'll also see the likes of Nightwing, Damian Wayne Robin, Tim Drake, etc. And then you do the next movie, Under the Red Hood, with Jason Todd Red Hood returning. There's just no way in like a possible future that it doesn't make at least $1.5 billion if the movie is good. And then you also get to introduce the fan favorite in Red Hood, so again, to me, this is just a no-brainer. Next up on the list, ladies and gentlemen, I have Darkseid War and/or Final Crisis, and the reason why I have this tied again is because I really just want some type of Darkseid storyline showcased in the DCU where Darkseid is the main big bad. I don't think that they're going to do this now because James Gunn's already said Darkseid's not going to be the main big bad of the current DCU, but later on, like when we get to like the 10-year mark, maybe 15-year mark, I think that this should definitely be the direction that they go in. And I'm not going to lie, now that I think about it, I don't even think that it needs to necessarily be based off of Final Crisis or Darkseid War specifically. Those are just two storylines I could see them pulling inspiration from to do a Darkseid adaptation. But ultimately, we need to see the Justice League versus Darkseid in the DCU at some point. The next storyline I have on the list is Superman Batman Public Enemies. I think that this would make the perfect world's finest movie for the DCU because it would perfectly fit the climate of the current DCU. Again, like I already said, government and metahumans don't really get along, or the government is controlling metahumans. Lex Luthor currently is also on a redemption arc and is potentially going to run for president in the DCU later on, which would again perfectly set the stage for him to try and frame Superman again and have him and Batman on the run as fugitives. And by proxy, you could have the metahumans that work for the government go after them the same way it happens in the comic and in the animated movie. You could quite literally adapt this story one-to-one. It would be beautiful. And lastly, ladies and gentlemen, I have another tie, but these are the two storylines that I want to see in the DCU the most, and that is the Sinestro Corps War and Blackest Night. Now again, the reason why I have these two tied is because they go in tandem. In the Green Lantern 2005 run, the Sinestro Corps War helps to set the stage for Blackest Night later on in that run. If they go the route of Green Lantern Rebirth in the DCU, I think that a Sinestro Corps War event movie for the entire DCU that features the Green Lantern Corps, the Justice League, etc. would be absolutely beautiful. Not only do we get Prime Hal Jordan in action, but we also get to see Sinestro and Hal Jordan's dynamic even more explored than it is in Lanterns. And then we just get dope moments from all of the Lanterns in the Green Lantern Corps, like John Stewart, Kyle Rayner, Guy Gardner. You could introduce characters like Sodom Yacht. And I'm not gonna lie, with the DCU being as fantastical and whimsical as it already is, I wouldn't be surprised if the Anti-Monitor or Superboy Prime still happened to be in this movie. Obviously, those are pretty big characters, but you have to remember that in continuity, the DCU has objectively been around for quite some time. So if they explain it by saying that the Anti-Monitor was banished to Quard after he tried to destroy the multiverse, and Superboy Prime is a villain that's also just an enemy of the Guardians of Oa, this being the project that introduces those two characters could also work really well in my opinion. And their common hatred for the Guardians could be exactly how Sinestro is able to recruit two powerful characters like that to the Sinestro Corps. And this honestly makes a lot of sense because I really doubt that they do Crisis on Infinite Earths, so the Anti-Monitor largely has no real effect in this DCU unless they plan on doing Crisis on Infinite Earths way later on down the line. And even if they do plan on doing that, you introducing the Anti-Monitor in Sinestro Corps War just already sets the stage for that, because you could just have him play a minor role in Sinestro Corps War, have a brief fight with the League, have him fight Superboy Prime, get defeated, but then come back stronger later on. But even if we got Sinestro Corps War without Superboy Prime and without the Anti-Monitor, I would still want an adaptation of the storyline because it's just so peak. But overall, those are the storylines that I would really love to see in the DCU and that I genuinely think that we need in the DCU. Each of these storylines are some of the most iconic stories that DC has to offer, and it's just something that they need to showcase to a larger audience. But if you have any storylines that you personally would like to see, let me know what they are in the comments. And also, if you enjoyed the video, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And also hit the hype button if you have the feature available. And as always, it's been K the God. I'll catch you boys in the next one.